Hi. Okay, so this is my can you see my little boy? He's all curled up. This is my little Ryan update. All right. So when I was first in the hospital, I was breastfeeding, um, ah, and it was going awesome. If you read my blog or Twitter, because I haven't really been blogging lately, and I'll get into why. Um, Stupid hair. Never. Um, when I was in labor, I developed an infection from the meconium in the fluid. So they had put me on antibiotics, and my infection cleared up, no problem. However, when I was almost ready to leave the hospital, I had noticed like a red rash underneath my boobs. Just a sec. I had noticed a red rash underneath my boobs. And I thought it was, just like a heat rash or something. Um, but I wanted to mention it just in case because I was wondering if there was anything I could put on it to make it go away. And the nurse took a look at it and she was like, "That's not a heat rash, that's a yeast infection." I was like, what? Like, I thought you could only get that like down there, yeast infection. She goes, "Well, actually a yeast infection can develop anywhere where there's a fold of skin. And guys can get yeast infections." I did not know that. So she's like, a fold of skin, a dark place, and somewhere that has lots of heat is a prime spot for yeast infection. And obviously, underneath of your boobs is a great spot. So she prescribed me some nystatin or nystatin cream for it. And she told me that I could continue breastfeeding, but that I had to be really careful because Ryan could get thrush from it if I wasn't. And then we would spread it back and forth, and it could get into my boobs and infect the milk and just all this other stuff. So I was like, okay. So despite me being really careful, he started to get a rash around his mouth, and I just like freaked. I'm like, no, I'm not even gonna go there. Some women will still breastfeed and treat the baby's thrush with her thrush on the boobs and stuff, and I'm like, no, we're just gonna go ahead and pump until it clears up. So so when we got home, he was breastfeeding like awesome. He was just the most mellow baby ever that you could ever ask for. Just super content, happy. And then a couple days after my milk came in, 3 days, oh, probably a little bit longer than that. And even when I was breastfeeding after my milk came in, he started to like have a lot of spit up from eating, and he seemed to be getting a tummy ache afterwards. He would like arch his back, and he started being really fussy, which I thought was odd. So after we started pumping, we gave him a bottle. We would give him 1 to 2 ounces, and we really started noticing him being fussy after that. And another thing I noticed was that when the milk was sitting in the fridge before I fed it to him, it never separated, like foremilk and hind milk. The foremilk is thin and watery, and the hind milk will sit on top. It'll get a creamy layer. And the bottles in the fridge that I had didn't have layers on top. It was just like all watery. And I never had a problem. I never have a problem maintaining a milk supply. Let me put it that way. When I was breastfeeding Christopher, I had no problems whatsoever. In fact, I always kind of thought that I made quite a bit of milk, breast milk. So I dug out my little card that came with my breastfeeding book, and I called a lactation consultant, and she asked me like how, often he had been feeding, when I was pumping, how much I was pumping, and I told her, I'm like, well, right now I'm pumping like 4 ounces out, and like from one boob, and my boob still is not soft afterwards. So I told her that, and she's like, oh my gosh. She's like, you actually probably have an oversupply of milk. which basically means that for whatever reason, my body just produces a crazy amount of breast milk, just a crazy amount. Um, and I was like, I don't know why, it's usually your breasts make as much milk as the baby's eating, and mine just make more, a lot more. And I told her some of Ryan's symptoms, which had developed worse. They had gotten into he would cry from. He was crying from 7 p.m. until midnight, and when he slept, it was in spurts. You could only hold him with a pacifier. Maybe he'd take a pacifier. And the first night, I dismissed it as, maybe he just has a bellyache. But after that, it started happening more throughout the day. It wasn't just in the evening. And this started on the 25th. It's now the 30th. The 25th is when it started getting bad. Um, it's been worse the past 3 days. It's kind of a constant thing. When he's awake, he's crying. When he's eating, he's fine, but 30 minutes to an hour afterwards, he's fussing, he's crying uncontrollably, nothing works. Um, you can't swaddle him, you can't give him a bath. He's got, gas. He has really like curdy poop. It's all curdled. His legs were just shaking because he was in pain. And he's like constantly wanting to eat more because he's got a bellyache or something. So we switched to formula because the lactation consultant, and based on the research I've done from breastfeeding books and stuff, an oversupply of breast milk in the mother can cause a fore milk hind milk imbalance, which it's not really an imbalance, it just means that I wasn't pumping enough milk to drain my boob to get the hind milk. And so he was eating too much fore milk, which can cause lactose overload, which it's not lactose intolerance, it's just too much lactose, which causes them to be fussy, get the stomach ache, have a lot of poops, explosive poops. He's pooping almost every diaper, which is at least every 2 hours is poopy. It's explosive. When he sleeps curled up on my chest. And I know a lot of babies do that, but it's like a classic tummy ache position. He constantly has to be held to be comforted because his stomach hurts. If you put him down within 10 to 15 minutes, he'll notice. It's just been really demanding. And I feel terrible for him because you can't make him better. And this is the same thing I went through with Christopher. Um, I actually didn't find out that he had colic, that he got diagnosed with colic right almost as it was ending, and then that kind of segued into his surgery. So that's why I didn't notice the symptoms of his sickness right away, is because he had colic. And, I'm just like, the odds of having one baby with colic are very low, but to have two in a row, it's really stressful. And I've just been like really sad and emotional that I don't get to enjoy the newborn stage, um, because it's so tiring. It's been the other night, yesterday, I was running on 45 minutes of sleep because from midnight until 3 p.m. he just wouldn't sleep. So the formula doesn't seem to be helping. um, I'm hesitant to try Zantac because I'm not sold that it's reflux. I ended up taking him into the doctor today because he just would not stop crying. um, it was a really long night from like, I don't even know what time, but yeah, see, I still have our bracelet on. But from 6 o'clock this morning until we got to the hospital, he was awake and fussing and crying. So, excuse me. Of course, we get to the hospital and he is passed out because he's exhausted from crying so hard. So these doctors and nurses are looking at me like I am just, crazy, like, oh, it's just normal fussing. He seems to be pretty happy now. And it's like, yeah, because he's been up and crying for almost 12 hours. And today he was crying so hard that his belly button started bleeding. And that was the final straw. I was just like, this is it. This is ridiculous. And, I've been wanting to take him in But then, and we had him all ready to go last night at 10 o'clock. But then there's like that shiny, glimmering moment of hope when he stops crying, and you think, oh, I don't have to take him in. And, because what are they going to do? They're going to tell you to, feed him 1 ounce every hour and feed him smaller amounts, and I don't know. I just want somebody to tell me something definitive, and nobody can. I guess it's just frustrating because we have to figure it out on our own, and I'm just kind of stressed with it because I don't know what to do. I feel pretty helpless, and I'm also sad because my husband goes back to work on Monday, 2 days, and I don't know what I'm gonna do all day. Even with my husband being home, our house is a wreck. Well, I mean, it's not a wreck, but there's dishes. Our room is terrible. Our bed isn't made. I just have, I've just been whipping my clothes off from the day, putting them right on the floor. I haven't even had time to clean up or anything. And I know that, the boys are fed, their diapers are changed, and they're content. That's what matters, but it's just really hard. So I'm looking for natural methods to try to ease tummy aches. So far, the one I've run across is just a little bit of nursery water in the bottom of a bottle, and like a drop of peppermint extract is supposed to be soothing on their stomachs. Um, and there's a variation of that. Actually, what the practitioner told me today was putting um, a peppermint, I guess, just a peppermint, in the bottom of a bottle, just with like an ounce of water in it, and that's supposed to help. But I think, I really think like the peppermint extract would work better than the actual peppermint. And knock on wood, it did kind of seem to help him because I fed him to it out of the bottle, and he like noticed at first like, hey, this is not milk or formula, and afterwards he took the Nook, and actually he's sleeping now from the peppermint. I don't know if that's what it's from, but then he went in the swing for actually almost 20 minutes, which was awesome, and he actually farted afterwards, and his stomach made a big groan. So I don't know if it was coincidence or if it actually was the peppermint, but let's hope. I'm very hesitant to just stick him on the Zantac as, like a cure, because I really don't know that it's reflux. I don't know. I'm thinking that it was lactose overload due to my breast milk imbalance, so I've been trying to decrease my supply. I'm still pumping, um, and waiting until I see the cream in the top of the bottles before I start feeding them to him before I start feeding them to him, so that I know for sure that he's getting the right proportion of breast milk, just because I have an oversupply. And I don't know how common that is, but she told me to go home today and pump as much as I could out of my boobs, and I pumped 8 ounces out of each one, and I still had a little more in there, but I just was not taking any more out because I'm like, no way. I am not pumping 10 ounces per session. And granted, I've been trying to decrease my supply, so my boobs have been kind of engorged, but that's crazy. That's a crazy lot of breast milk from one boob, from one pumping session. So, I'm really hoping this gets better and his tummy problems will get figured out, because I didn't figure them out with Christopher, and I feel terrible now that, I know early with Ryan, but I'm hoping it straightens out and we get everything under control, because I really would like to enjoy the newborn stage with my baby. So